host of the Robbie Starbucks Show, and he joins us now. Robbie, great to have you with us. Before we dig into some of your major recent success stories against DEI, for those who may never have heard of it, can you tell us what exactly DEI is and why it's so dangerous for the American people?
Yeah, thanks for having me. So to dive in really fast, DEI is, like you said, it's supposed to stand for diversity, equity, and inclusion. What it really is a Trojan horse for left-wing politics. And the clue to that is the middle of that term, equity. Equity in itself is a Marxist concept that guarantees equality of outcomes versus equal opportunity. And so that's an idea rooted in far-left Marxist political theory. And essentially the idea behind it is, if, let's say you're in school, everybody needs to end up at the same place. So you all need to graduate with the same grades, which we all know is a ludicrous concept because you have people who are motivated differently, people with different skills. This is part of how we are able to kind of see where people belong in society. Oh, you're fantastic at math. Maybe you're veered more toward these areas, or you're fantastic in engineering, these areas. And you can't identify that when you try to make everybody the same. And that's what this ideology tries to do. But it's even worse than that, because the actual policy set that came along with it is one that in itself violates our existing civil rights laws, and the fact that they're just blatantly racist. And it's anti-white specifically. It targets and hurts some other groups like Asians. And, I've seen some complaints from Indian folks too here in the U.S., and it greatly favors other groups. So your favored groups are your Black Americans, your Latinos, like myself. I mean, I'm Latino, so I'm saying this from a point where, I understand my own kids would benefit from these policies, but I don't want them to another day because it's unearned. We want to earn what we have. And so these policies also are the bigotry of low expectations, because the belief system is essentially that people who are Latino or Black need an extra step up over everybody else because they're just not as capable. And I think that in itself is racist, and so that's been our contention. It's brought along with it a lot of crazy theories and a push for sexuality on children as well, which is a whole other subject. But, that's why we've been going after this and eliminating it everywhere we can.
Yeah, let's dig into the war. And number one, Robbie, your family fled communist Cuba, so you know what you're talking about when it comes to Marxism. And number two, you mentioned the gender madness, pushing that on kids. You've got a great film about it out right now we're going to talk about. But first, look, you have gone after companies that have been embracing and promoting this DEI agenda. I think of Walmart. I think of John Deere, two traditional classic American companies, but they delved in and went down this radical left-wing path with DEI. How did you hold them accountable?
Well, when we find companies, we do deep research, and that's probably the most novel thing we do that you won't find in previous boycotts. Is we're very meticulous in the way we research everything about them, down to the psychology of the executives, who they're friends with, where they went to school, what makes them tick, and we look through every public forum they've ever had. And then the magic, the secret sauce, if you will, is the fact that all of our investigations are predicated upon whistleblowers coming to us and telling us sort of what is wrong, from within the belly of the beast, as you will. And so having that gives us an advantage too in ensuring that these companies actually change after they profess to be changing. Because if not, we will hear about it from those people who initially came to us, and that's sort of what separates us. But the other thing that separates us, and why this has been so successful, what we've done is because companies had prepared PR responses for 24-hour news cycles. We are not built for that, because I'm able to do this 30 straight days, 60 straight days if necessary, dropping news that is unpopular for the company every single day. And so they figured out quite quickly as we started doing this that companies try different approaches, and the longer you let it go on, the more damaging it was. For instance, when we focused on Tractor Supply, they lost almost $3 billion in market cap. When we focused on John Deere, they lost about $10 billion with a B in market cap. Harley Davidson, I'm not sure will recover from how long they held out until they finally changed, because their CEO wanted to dig in and essentially, fight for wokeness. And in the end, we won, and we have every time. We have 100% flip rate against these companies, because ultimately the way we pulled these stories together is we expose everything that they have done that has fallen out of alignment with the American consumer. Namely things like that we found along the way, funding a camp for children to be taught by drag queens on learn how to be a drag queen. We've found them funding centers that are promoting the sex changes for children. We've found them donating to groups that are highly supportive of illegal immigration and working to legalize illegal immigration. All types of things across the board. And then companies, funding these pride events where you have children being sexualized or watching very highly inappropriate drag shows that are meant for adult audiences, and things across the board. So we put all that madness together to paint a picture of how a company has fallen out of whack, and these have gone incredibly viral. So like in the case of Harley Davidson, I think we were around 1 billion views across the internet from people taking my videos, because I also do this. I'm like, look, I don't need the money from ads. Anybody who watches this video, download it, put it on your social media, share it wherever you want, monetize it, do whatever you want to do, but get the word out. And that has been incredibly effective.
And you're doing exactly that, Robbie. After the break, I want to ask you why exactly these companies would go down this woke road in the first place. We also want to talk about your important film, The War on Children. More with Robbie Starbuck after the break. Don't move.
Also see opportunities. Jesus became a human being, came to redeem humanity.
God has given us a season of opportunity for the sake of the gospel, and we will see the blessings of God extended.
Bon Natale, and in English, Merry Christmas. Amen.
Robbie Starbuck Show. Robbie Starbuck is with us. Robbie, before the break, you were laying out some really stunning information about companies like Walmart, John Deere, even Harley Davidson embracing a woke, radical left-wing agenda and the DEI madness. Why would these companies do this in the first place? It doesn't seem to make sense, at least on the surface.
Yeah, I think a lot of this is predicated on what happened in 2020. So after George Floyd, what happened was executives got put in this position where they were incredibly fearful of being framed as racist because there was sort of this mob mentality out there, right? And so what happened is the radicals within the organization came to these executives in a very coordinated fashion. And there's a lot of activist groups we go into that were behind that, but they came to them and said, essentially, you need to form these departments to show in a forward-facing way that we're not racist, we're here for everybody. And I will say the pitches that they made back then, you could see, if you had seen them, you would have seen why a person who was not deeply involved in politics would have thought this was a nonpartisan thing that was just going to message like, oh, we're here for everybody, right? That's not the case, though. They empowered some of the most extreme political activists possible, and these departments became a factory for left-wing politics and really a poison throughout these companies. And wouldn't you know it, when you feed the beast grew. It's kind of like that book, If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. I read that to my kids when they were little. They're going to ask for a glass of milk. And that's what happened. And so these things just ballooned into these massive programs. And you saw the trainings become very racial in nature. It was about making the white people feel like they were oppressors and everybody else was oppressed by them. And you need to read Ibram Kendi's How to Be an Anti-Racist, which is a book that says that you have to be anti-capitalist in order to be anti-racist. So you've got to be able to appreciate the irony that was the number one resource that we identified in all the hundreds of trainings that we have reviewed, was them recommending that book at the end as a resource of these training modules. And the executives at the very top, still to this day, many of them have no clue that is what happened in those programs, because they're so disconnected from it, because they're focused on the pure financials of the company, and they're not even considering how this stuff is affecting the financial performance of the company. Now that this is all being brought to the surface, that's changing, and they're fundamentally starting to realize they were lied to and that these crazy programs exist. So it was that desire to not be seen as racist that birthed this, but now you've got a movement of sanity in America, and that's birthing the walk back.
Yeah, exactly. And we have you shining a light on this, and also President Trump taking office January 20th. That should make for a sea change here as well. Your great film, Robbie, The War on Children. Number one, why did you make it? And number two, look, you're a strong Christian, and I have to think not only this was common sense, but your faith played a big role in this. Keep your hands off our kids. That's the message, right?
Yeah, it's also that, sometimes the abuses come in the least likely places, and the parents, no matter how good of a parent you are, need to sort of examine, like, how can we better protect our kids and their peer group? And so a lot of this was, I had a talk. I think this can be summarized well this way. I spoke with Rand Paul's wife, and she said something that kind of succinctly put together why my wife and I felt it was so important to make this movie, The War on Children. And it's because there's a lot of good-hearted people out there who simply, because they have been trained to believe the legacy media, do not believe that there is this mass sexualization push in schools. They don't believe that there's drag shows doing incredibly disgusting things in
That's
front
why
of little
people
kids. They
like
don't
me
believe
and
that any
you
child has
exist.
been given a physical sex change. They don't believe any of this has happened. And so to have a film that brings it all together with expert testimony, incredible people, United States senators, doctors, and victims of these ideologies, and people who've been trafficked, and how everything actually works, and social media executives that are willing to admit, yeah, we made a big mistake here, and we know the brain science, and we know what this is doing to kids. All of this comes together, and we also, alongside it, released a free parenting manual of like a checklist, all the things that you can look for to protect your kids at freedomforever.us, which anybody can get even without watching the film. But none of this would happen, our ability to make the film or to do this DEI project, without our amazing subscribers on my X page at x.com/Robbie Starbuck. You subscribe $5 a month. That's what allowed us to do the research teams that we have, to go and make these movies. We took a personal risk and put our own money in to do this stuff, but it's been wildly successful because of the people. And so, that's sort of the new model. This is the new world, the new media. And it's why with the DEI project, it's been so successful. If we release a video about a company tonight, it'll get more views than CNN gets in primetime this week. And that is a good change for America.
It is amazing, folks. Check Robbie out on X across social media. About 20 seconds left, Robbie. Are you optimistic that President Trump taking office will be another blow? The tide is turning against the DEI madness, it seems.
Absolutely. In fact, what was put on my desk that I saw right before this was an article in the Globe and Mail in Canada that was discussing how a combination of what we've done and Trump being in office means that Canada is going to have to pull back on ESG and DEI efforts because they simply know that it's going to be too much of a business problem for their major companies if they don't. We are going to spread this not just in the U.S., but across the world, because we're the leader, and it's time for America to recognize that, again, we are leaders. The world looks at us. Let's have good leadership, and President Trump's going to be the head of that spear.
Amen, Robbie. Well said. Keep up the great work, my friend. We'll see you again soon. God bless. Robbie Starbuck. And coming up after the break, crime and lawlessness, one of the offshoots of DEI. Well, former police officers here